Hello guys and gals, this is a 1989 I think Evinrude 60 horsepower. It has two holes in these bottom two cylinders. So I have determined the cheapest way to get this thing back on the water is to replace the power head here. So this video, that is the plan. First thing I'm going to do is disconnect the battery cables and then unbolt it. So let's dive right in. Alright, I want the power head taken apart as complete as possible. So what I'm disconnecting now is the power trim and tilt motor wiring. It is part of the power head wiring. Runs through the cowling. It's got to get unplugged. Sometimes these connectors are fine, no troubles. Other times they're trouble. So that's apart. Now for this plug, you're supposed to use the tool to push the pins out. The thing is, it's already cut here, so it's already needs to be repaired. So I'm just going to go with the yank them out method. Looks like the bottom, what is that, C? However they labeled this is just dumb. It goes A, B, C, D, E, so it's circular. I guess that makes sense, but whatever. Anyway, so C is the ground, B is the white, which came out there, whatever. Alright, so that's unplugged. Fuel line, that's going to get cut. New power head goes on, it's getting new fuel lines anyway. See you later, fuel line. Looks like the VRO may or may not still be connected. So that one I just cut was the oil line. Now I'm cutting the fuel line. Okay, fuel line is not cut. It's probably cut now. Water overboard indicator tube. Probably get replaced, but I'll try to get it off anyway. The reason I say it's going to get replaced is the back here. There's a T for water pressure gauge, which I currently don't have, so therefore don't need that there. I'll tuck that out of the way, kind of. All right, good enough. Disconnect the shift rod linkage. Cotter pin. Should be able to pull this in or out. Alright, so shift rod is disconnected. Put that right there so I don't lose it. Broken switch wiring. These bolt splices. Usually they've never been off, so I just kind of shake the connection a little bit, a little jiggle, freeze them up. So most of the cowling is now disconnected. We have two 5/16 right there. I'll get those out. Since this thing is going back together, all this hardware is important. And we got two over here. Okay, didn't record any of that. Just pulled out this slotted screw from this hole right here. Newer motors are going to have that slot. Yours may or may not, but you're always going to have a bolt right there. Now down inside there you see a spark plug. It obviously doesn't go there. The problem with this side is getting to it. Come on, spark plug. there is the other one. Probably the worst bolt to get to on these things. The only thing worse than that bolt is getting it back in, because that sucks. So that's what I'm up against. Alright, I got a little swivel extension on it. That's not working. This is a little easier on this one, but on like ones from the 70s. Oh, it's bad. I really don't even really know how they got them in there when they were putting this thing together. Probably tape. No, I'm actually getting lucky because this thing isn't in all the way. It's really just finger tight, so. That or I broke it loose with the socket. But it's coming out now. Will I be putting it in? Probably not. Oh, we'll see. There we go. Have a flashlight handy. Now this piece should drop. The front's out, covered in oil and just nastiness. We'll clean it up later. Am I getting flash here? There we go. You can see one of the screws now. The seal is in there, so it's a little tight. There's a bunch of hardware that's been lost over the years. A good way to save hardware is to install it back to where you got it from as you go. That way, you've got to come back. Well, you don't have to label bags and stuff, so that's right off the bat saving effort, but you're going to know exactly where those screws went. Assuming you can go back in. Unless you like replacing things, you want to be careful with this rubber seal. You're going to have to get it out of the way in order to get your socket in there to pull the main bolts out. So let it drop down like so. And we have 3 bolts on the outside perimeter. These are 9/16, not the half. News to me. Now, if these give even the slightest hint that they're not going to come out right away, I'm going to heat them up with a torch. Let them cool, heat them up with a torch, let them cool, and I'll probably do that for quite a while. Because if these things break in there, you're gonna hate fixing this motor the entire time. Yeah, come on, socket. Well, maybe I won't use the impact the whole way. Back here, there is a little nut hiding. This is a wrench I made a few years ago. I have a video about it. I ground the sides off so it's easier to get in these little holes. And this nut is giving me no troubles at all. Last things we need to unbolt are the front lower cowling bolts. Got one on each side. And there's, I believe, going to be a series of washers in here. Pretty easy to lose them all. So we have a big fender washer on top. Normal little cut washer below. So we have the inner ring, and below all of that we probably have another stack of a cut washer and a fender washer. So keep an eye out when you pull this off looking for those. And the other front. This one has a nice VRO pump in the way. Curious, the rears don't need to come off because they're attached to the Powerhead adapter here, not to the Powerhead block itself. Rears are fine, front's got to go. Now, factory puller body, large factory puller bolts. You're going to need a 9/16 wrench, tighten those down, and a lifting eye. Evinrude makes and sells one of these. I wanted to save some money and not buy an Evinrude one, so I picked up this one. I don't think it was any cheaper. Pretty sure they're the same price. I think it's a 7/8, 3/4, one of the two, fine thread bolt. Pretty expensive. Got a little bit of pressure there, and I don't know if you noticed, but the Powerhead popped right off. Which is good, but doesn't mean much. I didn't pull the lower unit before moving the Powerhead. Should I have? Yes. Did I? No. So we have a drive shaft coming from the lower into the crankshaft. We also have the bolt in the rear, has a stud on it going into the Powerhead adapter. If we just pull, it's going to bind up not only on the drive shaft, but on the stud in the back. So the secret to my Powerhead removal success here really is this tire spoon. I mean, it's pretty big. It allows you to get into the rear and push that stud up while lifting the engine hoist to keep the Powerhead nice and straight. So it's now up and straight. It means I can go up a pinch more, get it back on there and do it again. Now with it up a little bit more, I can give the rear some pressure, and it's stuck. Which means I went too high too fast. But since it's already loose, out she comes. As you go up, you want to look for things you missed, such as this ground strap right here. Now these bolts constantly give you problems. I wouldn't pull one of these out unless you absolutely had to, nor would I do it without at least giving it a little bit of heat first. Yeah, it's going to discolor your Powerhead, but it's better than trying to drill this out. Trying to keep the flame away from the wire. I do plan on reusing it. Worst case, I'll have to make a new ground strap. But should this Powerhead go back together, I want the expense of that bolt. And you should probably, do it by hand. That came right out. Now that bolt is glowing hot, so can't touch it. Stay. That off. I've already recovered the one lower washer mount from over there, and one was stuck in the pan, so I have all of the hardware saved, which is nice. Our lower hood is disgusting. I mean, well, you can't see it, but trust me, it's disgusting. I'll pull off the rear screws, clean it up, give you some light. There, see? I mean, it's just gross. Nothing you want to touch. So I'll pull off the 2 rear screws, get the pan completely off, clean out the inside, and probably change out the switch over here. Pull the fuel fitting off. Hopefully change it out for a single, but I don't think I have one. Anyway, so yeah, that's still too hot to touch. So now that I know my power head's going to come off without any troubles, no broken bolts here, no problems, none. I am going to clean all of this up, order a new power head gasket, water pump, fuel lines, anything else I think I may need for this build. Again, I did that after I know it's going to come apart. If you're pressed for time, you could take the gamble, but I don't. Okay, I have cleaned up the surface. I have cleaned up the hood pan. I tapped the holes in the power head adapter here for the rear mount bolts. I've put new anti-seize on the bolts, cleaned them up as well, and basically the lower half here is ready for reassembly. I've cleaned up the power head hardware, switch ready to go, and to check, see if my holes are okay, all I did was put a bolt down there. They're nice and loose and nothing's in there. I was going to get a drill bit and ream them out a little bit, but they're all pretty clean and pretty nice, so no need. So that's my prep work for the bottom done. For the bottom of the replacement power head here, I have already cleaned up its gasket surface. I've tapped all but one hole. And all I do to tap it here is just run the tap down the hole. Just to clean out the old, I call it anti-seize, but it's actually just the Everard gasket sealing compound coated in the bolts. Anyway, it kind of gets all sticky as it ages. So you probably don't need to take it out of there, but it makes the getting bolts in much, much easier. So all I do is run the tap down it, cleans out the threads, gets all the gunkus out. Some people are probably thinking right now, use a tap handle. The thing is, I'm not tapping a new hole, I'm just cleaning out the old one. But you can see all the gunkus that accumulates if the camera will focus. So I would think it's worth doing. But at this point, the power head is pretty much ready to go back on. I really just need a gasket to get here. Should be here today, so this thing should be on. Alright, I have the replacement power head hanging from this series of chains here. The reason being is it matches the angle the motor is sitting on. So in theory, I can lower it straight down. I have my new gasket. And it looks like right there is where it's going to be going. Now, the drive shaft splines pretty much guarantee you aren't going to be aligned. So I'm going to pull the shift rod up or down. I don't care which way, honestly. Alright, now it's in gear. So I can rotate the propeller by hand to spin the drive shaft and align the splines into the crankshaft. All I got to do is go down, hopefully not destroy my gasket in the process. and get the bolts in. The angle may change as it comes down, so I will find out shortly, but I can adjust. These are getting pretty good. So, drive shaft just sat where it's supposed to, kind of. Angle might be a little off. Alright, drive shaft is on. Powerhead is lowered. Hopefully the gasket didn't move. It looked like it did a pinch, but I don't know about enough to really change anything. I'm gonna put some bolts in temporarily, just to see if they go. So one is started. Now I'm going to go to the opposite corner and put in another one. So I lifted the power head just a wee bit, enough to where there's no real weight onto the gasket. And I've started this front bolt here. And I've now have two in, which means I can probably get in the rest. But before I get too carried away, I want to get these lower mounts in. I've already coated the bolts in some triple guard grease. Or not grease, sorry. The gasket sealing compound. So hopefully I can get these washers in here. There's one. There's two. And this one's going to be a little harder. One thing you want to keep an eye on is the shift rod. Mine went right back in, but I made sure this was opened when I slid it on. So just keep that in mind. But we are shifting just fine. Alright, now for the problem. You're supposed to use OMC gel seal on these bolts. I don't have any. And if I did, I don't know if I'd want to use it just because it's so expensive. It's that aromatic sealer stuff. So I'm going to supplement by using my Loctite gasket sealing compound stuff here. It should work fine. But I have all of the bolts, well, all four corners of the bolts installed. The rest should follow suit, just like so. Look how beautifully that went in. So then I can take the others out. Two. Keep them all a little loose at first. you got to kind of hold the washer up because the washer, if it's hanging down by the bolt head, it doesn't have the clearance, so you got to hold the washer up here to slide the bolt in. It's kind of funky. So this bolt is a little stiff. So I'll just jiggle the power head around a little bit and it should clear right up. Okay, now for the rear bolt. Yeah, it looks good to me. Just somehow gotta get some hands in there. Alright, this Powerhead had a different ground strap on it. So I'm just gonna use the one that's there. External tooth lock washer goes down. And our nut goes back on. Okay, bolts here get torqued to 18 to 20 foot-pounds. I'm supposed to do it in stages, so I'll go halfway and then work my way up, so to speak, to get to the desired torque on those bolts. Don't tell me my ratchet's turned to crap. Sure seems like it. Maybe I'll go with the star pattern. First wave is done. Let's bump it up a little bit. Maybe this one. Okay, this nut back here is 60 to 84 inch-pounds. Find my just gotta find my wrench. So, we all know you're never getting a torque wrench in there. So, my plan is to just snug it up and call it a day. Click! Alright, done. Alright, put the little seal back in place. Now it's time for the rear thing. Get this lower thing here on. So I'm going to set the rear bolts in there. I'm not going to tighten them down for any fine adjustments I need to make. Now, I've already tapped those holes inside of that lower pan cowling, so the screws are going to go right in, but I'm still dipping the screws in the gasket sealing compound just to make sure that should the time ever come, these don't give me any problems. All right, you sometimes need to be a little bit of a contortionist to get this back in. It doesn't seem to be that bad on these 3 cylinders, but like on a 4-cylinder, you almost feel like you got to break it to get it off. But like I said, on these smaller ones, it seems to really not be an issue. You can get it on and off pretty easily. So on if you're doing this on a 4-cylinder or something, you can't get that off, don't worry about it. Just leave it. Not going to ruin your day if you can't get it on and off. Just let it fall down, hit down there, and go about whatever you're doing. So I'm going to get these started, just like the others. I'll tighten them all down after all the screws are in. Now that beauty down there being the hardest, I think I'll do first. You really need long reach, tiny little pliers. Probably some kind of medical instruments to get stuff in there easily. But you can do it, just don't complain about it as much as I do. There. Get a ridiculously long screwdriver. Like that. Like I know what I'm doing, right? This is easy because you can see it and feel it. The thing is, I can't get my hand in there with the camera in the way, so. And that's it, really. We have now installed our replacement Powerhead. Bolts are torqued, everything's back to where it went. We have no bonus parts. All in all, I think I did a perfect job. Now, most of this was easy because the VRO pump wasn't here, making this bolt easy to get to, the lower cowling bolt down there easy to get to. And keep in mind, I even pulled off the fuel fitting here so I didn't have a little barb sticking out poking me. That made it pretty easy. If I were going to do this, I'd probably make sure I remove the VRO pump first, just to ease access. There's still a lot to do before I fire this up. I need to go through the carburetors, change the fuel lines, figure out some type of way to pump fuel into the motor, and then cooling too. I don't know how old the water pump in here is, so I got to do the water pump. While I'm there, I do the gear case. Then we see if it starts. So there's still a lot to do, but at least you got the gist of, if you're going to replace a Powerhead on these things, what you're up against as far as just swapping the Powerhead. That's not even rebuilding one. Which brings me to my next point. We have an 89 lower with a 94 upper. Obviously, it bolts on, drive shaft fit, everything's going to function. However, when it comes time to order parts, you now have 2 little Frankensteins you got to worry about. Yeah, all the parts are close, but the ignition system is different, voltage regulator is different, power pack's different, carburetors are different, linkage is different. Everything about it is pretty unique. I don't really like Frankensteining motors together, but in this case, I'm fine with it. What I'll probably do is but get this thing running and usable and operational and basically enjoy it for the time being. And then bite the bullet, maybe buy some Y-scope pistons, put them in here. I don't know, but rebuild that one and put it on just to keep everything the way it's supposed to be. You may also be telling yourself we spent too much time on this lower cowling. It's not a big deal. Skip it, save time. You know how many motors I've seen where the seller says, you know, runs great, never any issues, but it's missing the lower cowling here? Well, they took that off for a reason. Chances are it wasn't to get a bolt they dropped. Chances are it was to remove, replace, swap the power head, and they were too lazy to put this back on. Now, what else were they too lazy to do? You know, so that's always a sign to me that this is a basket case of a motor and it's worth nothing more than parts to me, is this missing lower cowling. So if you're going to do one of these, take the time, put this back on.